This is Transcend with Nat, where we are awakening to the spiritual heart, sharing stories and awarenesses along the path of transcendence. Hi, and welcome to Transcend with Nat. This is Nat. I am your host, the host with the most. That's right. So today we're going to be talking about having a positive mindset and giving an example of what that's like when you're going for goals, when you're going towards your direction in life, when you're going towards purpose. I've got this new mic set up here. In case you're listening on Spotify, I am videotaping these. It's not tape anymore. Do we even say videotape anymore? God, I'm getting old. So it is videoing, digital videoing, these episodes that I am putting out on X, on YouTube, on my Substack channel. So you can go to any of those places, and you can also sign up with my Substack weekly article on Substack. You can get all that on my website, transcend.online. And today I'm going to be using, as I have been recently, my new book. My new book is called Transcending the Practice of Spiritual Living, Volume 2. And that is on Amazon.com. You can look up my name, Nathaniel Sherritt, and get the book Transcending the Practice of Spiritual Living. We're going to be talking a little bit about what I discuss in Chapter 6 of Transcending Volume 2. And it's called Making Your Challenges Good. Making Your Challenges Good. And the story is, and I'll just tell you the story that's in this chapter. There was this day, one of my favorite breaks here in Puerto Rico. And the reason I love this break in surfing is that it's really fun, no matter whether it's as big as your waist or 20 foot, 25 foot. It even gets to 30 feet, maybe even bigger. I haven't seen it probably bigger than 25 feet, but it does get really big, and it stays perfect no matter if it's the right swell direction. It stays perfect no matter how big the swell gets, which is pretty rare to have a break that has that much versatility. And it's also a really special place. I mean, I've seen whales there. There's always rainbows. It's absolutely gorgeous. And so that's something I really love. I got this new boom arm for my mic, and you're seeing me adjust it a little bit here on the video. Still getting used to that. So we're talking about this story at this day. It was 15 foot plus, definitely faces, maybe 18, maybe bigger. My pro surfer friends would probably say that it was 15 foot, maybe 15 foot plus. That's how they like to say 17 foot. But my amateur surfers might say that it was 18, 20 feet. And then people who just are watching would probably say it's like 30 feet or something, because people, it looks really big. Either way, it was a big day. And not only was it a big day that day, but it was messy. It wasn't perfect. It was just kind of all over the place. Usually at that spot, like I said, it has this, it's like a freight train. I mean, it'll mow you down, and I've had some of the gnarliest hold downs underwater there, just because it'll just keep you down. It'll drive you so deep that it gets dark and you have no control of your body. And it's really a lesson in trying to stay calm when you need to breathe and you don't know how long and how long you're going to be down there. You don't know which way is up, and it's really quite an experience. Usually there's a somewhat of a channel that you can get out on, so you can kind of go a little bit between and around where the waves break to get out to the back of this break. But on this day, there was no channel. And so when the sets would come in, and the sets were really big, they could close out, which means just break all at once. So there's no real riding the wave. I mean, you can ride it down the wave face, and then you can't keep going on the wave because it's not peeling, it's just dumping. And the channel is also closed out. The channel also has these waves just dumping, and they're huge. And there really weren't that many people out as per usual on those days, which is actually the fun part of going out on the bigger days, is that it's this small crew of people that are pretty hardcore. And instead of people really competing for the waves, they're just trying to survive. So everyone's working together in a lot of ways. And everyone's stoked for everyone else if you get a good wave and all of that. So I was sitting in the parking lot looking at these behemoths, these monsters just crashing. And there was a few people out that were the pros on the island, and a few crazy amateurs like myself. And I was looking, and inside of me, I was like, I don't know if I've got it in me. I don't know if I have it in me anymore to do this kind of thing. Like, what am I even doing? I had this dialogue going on inside, and finally a friend of mine decided to paddle out, and he's like, come on, Nat, let's go. And I was like, all right, I'm just going to, because the other thing is that if you timed it wrong, and you couldn't time it, that's a part of the problem. There was no channel and you couldn't really time it. So if you paddled out towards where you want to catch the waves, and you're paddling out from the shore, if you happen to get the wrong timing, you're going to get caught by this big set, and it's going to crash on your head, and it's just going to demolish you. So you kind of had to luck out. You had to get out into the place where the lineup, and the place where you catch the waves. You had to get out to the outside of these massive freight train beasts by luck, pretty much, because you couldn't really plan on the timing of the sets either. So it was a kind of a tricky, complicated day, which I don't really like going out on big days when they're like that. I don't particularly like going out on big days anyway. I like catching the waves when they're big because it's really fun. Once you're on the wave, it's like incredible. But yeah, it's a whole experience. So anyway, so this day I decided inside of me, I was like, okay, here's my plan. I am going to paddle out. I'm going to give it a shot. And I had an out point because the current's so strong, it's just going to push you so far down no matter what. And you're going to have to paddle out. And I was like, but if I'm not outside, at least getting close to the outside by this certain point in time, or this certain place actually geographically, which is really far down the beach, that at that point I would choose to get out, because that would probably mean I got worked pretty good by a set, and that's why I couldn't get out. So I decided, okay, I'm going to just, be sportsman with myself. And if I make it out to the outside, great. But I'm going to give it a shot because I need to get over this fear and this internal questioning and this internal back and forth thing. And so I chose to go out, and I got myself ready, and mentally, I always definitely take some time on days like that to do breathing work, to prepare, to stretch, to warm myself up, to do some calling in the light in a very specific way, very intentional way. It's a really sincere, focused preparation on a day like that. And a big part of that is the mental preparation, and for me also the spiritual preparation. And I started paddling out, and my mind was really in this negative place in a way. It was just full of explicatives, like it was just, what am I doing? Every time the inside waves, which are still solid, those are still, 6 foot to 10 foot, whatever, you're still getting hit and beat up, would hit me in that white water. Those walls of white water would just brutalize me. My mental attitude was just terrified and playing that tape of I'm gonna die. It's not the good tape. That's not the tape you want when you're paddling out into big waves. And at some point in my paddle out, as it's progressively, the waves are getting harder and harder and hitting me harder and harder, and the whitewater is getting more and more powerful. At some point in that paddle out, I realized that I needed to switch my mental attitude. It's really important to have a positive mental attitude and to be able to handle that kind of size and waves and hold down. You need to have your mind in the right place. And so I latched onto this idea that the harder the waves are hitting me, that actually means I'm getting closer to my goal. I'm getting closer to the outside. I'm getting closer to the lineup where you take off and catch the waves. Every time it would get harder, it would hit me harder, I would decide that, oh man, I must be getting closer. I must be getting closer. And it's like that little story of the kid that's shoveling the manure out of the stables and whistling and having a good time. And someone's like, why are you having such a good time? Like, why are you so happy shoveling this crap? And the kid's like, well, with all this manure, there must be a pony somewhere nearby. So the kid was excited about that and dealing with all the manure, all the excrement that he was shoveling to get to that pony. So where are we going with all this? It's not just a story about surfing. It's a story about having the mental attitude. It's a story about where your mind is when you're dealing with this constant progression of things hitting you that are hitting you away from your goal, because that's what was going on that day. These waves, these walls of whitewater were hitting me away from where I'm trying to get to, and they hurt. And when you're going for a goal, when you're going for a dream, when you're going for something bigger in your life, and even when you're going on the inward path, when you're going on that spiritual awakening path, there are always going to be these obstacles and these blocks and things that seem to be against you. And that's really a mindset that they're against you. Yes, they're challenging. Yes, they seem like roadblocks, but they actually are there for you when you shift how you're perceiving it. So when you shift to these waves, I'm going to die, and these waves are powerful, to the more powerful they are, the closer I'm getting to my destination, that I'm getting to where I want to go. When you change that, then those become your stepping stones. And so what happened on this day? What happened on this day is that my friend, who I said was paddling out and told me, come on now, let's go, was a little bit ahead of me. And all of a sudden on the horizon, you actually lose the horizon with these mountains of water that are coming to you. You see these mountains of water. It's terrifying. These mountains of water are just coming your way. And you're like, oh my God. And it truly is like, oh my God, these things are so powerful. And I see my friend just scratch up and over the wave, and I realize it's like the worst feeling. One of the worst feelings in surfing is that I realized that this mountain of water that I was paddling towards, that I was not going to make it over. And this was going to land on my head. And so inside, it's like, buckle up, baby, because you're about to go for a fast ride to the bottom and to a very dark place. And that's what happened. It just hounded me down so deep and so violently. And then finally you get up, and if you're lucky, and I was lucky that day, I had time to do my recovery breathing and get a breath before the next mountain of water just took me down. And as it's doing that, it's pushing you further and further away. Luckily, sometimes it doesn't do that, but this time it was pushing me further and further away from the impact zone. Eventually, I get up. The set is over. I've made it through. I look around to orient where am I now, because you have no idea where you ended up. And I was so far down the beach that I had actually made it to the point where, remember when I was paddling out, I said, if I am not to the outside, if I'm still on the inside of where the waves are breaking, by the time I reach this point, way, way down the beach, then I've got to go in. And so I did. I stuck to my plan, my risk assessment plan, and I had just been worked to the inside. I paddled towards the beach. I got in, and right after me, well, let me put it this way, right after me, as I got in, I looked back, and the biggest set of the day, a cleanup set, which sometimes happens at this spot, that just cleans up everyone waiting for waves because it's so big and actually ends up crashing where the takeoff spot is for most of your waves. And it's just that really big set. And they call it a cleanup set because it just cleans everyone out of the lineup. Came in, and right after me, as I'm getting out, a friend of mine who's also probably one of the best surfers on the island currently, he was very close to, he's just one heat actually away from making it into the last Olympics for surfing. Really, really cool guy. He got out, and his board had just gotten eaten up. Like, it looked like a monster had eaten his board. There was just holes everywhere. And his leash had broken on that set, and the board had gotten slammed into the rocks, and he had to swim in. He was able to get his board, get out, and he was super pumped. He's like, oh, I'm going to go grab another board and paddle back out. Oh, man, this is so awesome. But he got worked. I got so worked on that last cleanup set, and my board, it snapped, the leash snapped, and it got, destroyed. But he got out after me. And the good news is that I stuck to my plan, because if I had taken that set on the head and I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to keep paddling out, that cleanup set I would have been right in the spot of impact by the time set came, and it would have been an unpleasant, very unpleasant probably experience. Hopefully not death or something like that, which I'm not saying that would be an unpleasant experience, but just the power of these things is pretty magnificent. So I chose to call that a day, and then I ended up paddling out the next day and had just a blast because the conditions finally cleaned up, and the wind was much better the next day. But there's a few things I want to point out in this story about having a positive mental attitude, and especially when you're dealing with going towards a goal. And for that, I'm actually going to just read those lessons from Transcending the Practice of Spiritual Living, Volume 2, which is my new book by Nathaniel Sherritt, available on Amazon. And you can get yours today. So there's a couple things this story illustrates. When you're working towards a goal or vision, every challenge you get through is just an indicator you are that much closer to realizing your goal or vision. This is a positive mindset by which to view the obstacles you encounter in life. Sometimes you don't actually reach your goal, but if there is a growth of consciousness, then it is still a success. You may be being protected or will be giving something better at another point in time. And lastly, there's always another opportunity. Learn what you can from each experience, even seeming failures, and move on to your next opportunity for success and growth. Success, because success and growth. That's funny. Anyway, those are some keys to remember when you're going towards a goal, when you're getting these challenges that sometimes are discouraging, that you keep going because the more challenges that are coming at you, the stronger it's going to make you towards your goal, the more growth you're going to have if you have that growth mindset where you have your goal, you have your dream, you have your vision you're going towards. But bigger than that is this inner goal for inner growth, inner awareness, inner learning. So even in your failures towards your outer goals, your outer visions, even the things that cause a lot of problems or disturbances or are difficult, the challenges, the things that block you in the outer pursuit of your goal, that you still have the success of the learning, the growth, and the upliftment of the greater goal of the inner growth, the inner awareness. So when you're creating your goals, your visions, your dreams, you also at the same time can create the inner goal, the greater goal that's greater than the actual outer achievement of the goal, of the vision, of the dream. And the inner goal that's the greater goal is that of expansion, of growth, of learning. And so that no matter whether you fail or succeed in that specific vision or goal in the outer, you still have this vast gaining of knowledge, gaining of experience, gaining of wisdom. And so that whatever you do actually becomes a success for you. And that really is the bigger lesson when you're going towards something in this world, is that you're also really learning something on the inner, where you're really growing, you're really getting stronger. And to keep that mindset in mind as you're going towards the outer. That is what I wanted to give you today. Now, this book that this story is in, Transcending the Practice of Spiritual Living, Volume 2, is available on Amazon. It's also on my website, transcend.online, where you can get other things that I'm involved in. If I'm doing any events, you can get those there. You can sign up for my newsletter. I have a weekly newsletter where I talk about all of these kind of things, as well as this podcast. You can get one-on-one help with me. I am doing spiritual counseling. I do a spiritual life review. That's the first thing that I do with you. And then if someone needs more support, we can discuss working more consistently together. But I really focus on taking time to reevaluate your life in the light. That's really what the spiritual life review is about, is reconnecting to the inner knowing, to the inner intentionality of your life, to the inner purpose, and seeing what's going on in your life from a higher view, a spiritual view, and connecting with greater loving and light in all aspects of your life. Now, there is one thing I am trying out, which I'm going to tell you. If you're still listening to this, I'm going to tell you about this. And that is one of the things that I do when I do the spiritual life review, is that to start out, I call on the light, but I also tap in to see spiritually what is present. And I speak that, I say what I'm seeing in that process of calling us forward, you and me, or whoever I'm working with and me, into that light. And oftentimes, so often, that becomes the template of everything that we're actually going to be discussing, generally answers the questions that the person came with. And so it's a really powerful moment, a very, very powerful for me as well, not just for the other person. And I've gotten this request of just doing, and I record that in the spiritual life review, and I send that part of the counseling to the person. So you'll get that blessing, that calling in of the light, and that touching into the spirit, and what I'm seeing with all of that. You'll get a recording of that when I do these spiritual life reviews. So I had a request of just doing that blessing, just doing that calling in the light with this person But it's more than just calling in the light. It's calling in the light and tuning into the spirit of what's present for the person at that time and what I'm seeing, and that recording, and just doing that as a service for people. So that's something I'm testing out. And if you have interest in that, it's not a long process, but if you have interest in that and you're still listening here, then you're in the know, and you can reach out to me through my website, transcend.online. There's a place where you can contact me and discuss doing one of those and being a guinea pig on the cutting edge of just that part of the session rather than the full session. So let me know if you have interest in that, and go to my website, transcend.online. And until next time, Berush Beishan, the blessings already are. God bless you all.